Be discussing a variety of legal topics with experts in the field. If you would like to ask a question or share a story on the air, please call toll-free 888-565-1470. Once again, that's 888-565-1470. Now, let's talk legal with Jeff Van Treese.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Talk Legal. I'm your host, Jeff Van Treese. I'm an attorney with the law firm Oltman, Flynn & Kubler, where we specialize in intellectual property law, including patents, trademarks, and copyrights, as well as elder law. If you can check us out online and view all episodes of this show on our website at oltmanpatent.com. That's oltmanpatent.com. I'd like to thank all of our listeners, including those of you tuning in on the AM dial, as well as those watching online. If you have a question, comment, or story that you would like to share on the air, please feel free to call us toll-free at 888-565-1470. Once again, that toll-free number is 888-565-1470. We welcome your calls. I have a very special guest in studio this evening. Her name is Elaine Schwartz. Elaine is an elder law attorney in Hollywood, Florida, and she's also a former House representative in the Florida House of Representatives, and her term limit just expired last year, so this is her first legislative session not in Tallahassee. This evening, Elaine and I will be discussing some issues going on in Tallahassee and in Washington regarding health care. She served on a number of committees during her time in the Florida legislature, including health care policy. She also served on judicial oversight committees and a whole host of committees that are too numerous to discuss here. So, Elaine, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thanks so much for asking me. It feels like it'll be fun.
So I just have to ask, what's it like not being in Tallahassee this time of year?
Well, I certainly don't miss the trip. They don't make it easy. There are very few direct flights from Fort Lauderdale, and you have to spend almost a whole day going to Atlanta. That is really tough. But they used to have Mondays and Fridays as travel days, and a lot of the state reps and senators just go back and forth by car, but it's a little too long. Some still do that. They travel back and forth by car.
You were in office for quite some time. You're in office from 2006 up and through last year, 2014. So.
Right, and I never drove.
And you never drove, yes. Your specialty as an attorney is in elder law, and being that you served on some of these committees, I'd really like to get your thoughts on the debate over Medicaid expansion. We've heard a lot about it. A lot of people don't quite understand it, have a handle on what's going on. I'm wondering if you could just give us a brief overview of the issue of Medicaid expansion and what some of the interests are, and where you think we're going to be going from here.
Well, Medicaid expansion was really a very big move on the part of the federal government to try to cover more and more people. Right now you have limits on the amount of income and assets that one can have to be on Medicaid, and yet a little bit more than that still doesn't put you in a place to be able to afford insurance. So the Affordable Care Act has a lot of subsidies, but then there are those people we have people in our families. We have aunts, uncles, cousins, sisters, brothers who, just aren't able to earn enough and need to have Medicaid as their backup. And that expansion would expand the number of people, approximately 800,000 to 1 million folks who have too much to be on Medicaid, and yet their income is so small, something like $15,000, $18,000 a year for a family of four. They really can't afford premiums, and they have to have the Medicaid.
So the people that this essentially applies to are those people that make too much money to qualify for Medicaid, but they make too little money to qualify for an Affordable Care Act health care premium or subsidy.
Right.
So you're dealing with people that could potentially amount to approximately 5% of the population in Florida, that there's no way for them to get any government assistance for health care.
Right. Well, what they are doing right now is when people are sick, they go to the emergency room. So that's it. And emergency rooms, as you know, is the most expensive form of health care. I mean, they have to be prepared to do everything. You can't just be give them an aspirin or something when someone's broken their leg or has a gunshot wound or whatever it is. The emergency room is expensive, and they get the most expensive care. And it would be much better if they could have some kind of subsidy that allowed them to go to a doctor or get medication or get prescription drugs, or be able to get other kinds of care, a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant or some kind of care, and not only rely on the hospital's emergency room. So that's what Affordable Care Act would do, is would give them the Medicaid, which would give them other options. They'd be able to go other places and get care. And right now, if you're sick and you don't have insurance, you will get cared for. You will go to the hospital and and the law requires that you be taken somewhere.
And that's because of a federal law called EMTALA, which requires that emergency rooms cannot turn somebody away because of inability to pay. So even if you can't afford health care, you still get health care, but the only place you can get it is an emergency room. Outpatient clinic, a doctor's office, they can deny you care for inability to pay, but an emergency room, which is the most expensive care, as you mentioned, is the only place that they can seek treatment. And so the objective of Obamacare is to provide some sort of option for people that could receive less expensive forms of care.
Exactly. And so by expanding the number of people who can get Medicaid by, approximately 5% of the population, it's more efficient. And it's not a waste of money to have someone have a sore throat and have to spend a huge amount of money in an emergency room that comes out of the taxpayer's dollar. So,
And I'd also like to discuss some of the numbers here. Florida is turning down $22.6 billion approximately over the next decade by refusing to take in this federal money. Rather, hospitals will miss out on the $22.6 billion, and during this 10-year span, approximately it's up to $400 billion in federal monies that would flow to all of the states that have declined to expand Medicaid. This is something that's really astonishing, especially when you consider that for the first 3 years of Medicaid expansion, the state of Florida would not have to provide any matching funds.
Right, and the matching funds after 3 years is only 10%. So the argument of the naysayers who don't want to take it for whatever reason is that, well, we don't know that the federal government is going to be there in 3 years and or even after if they're going to actually honor their commitment. Well, when was the last time that the federal government didn't honor a commitment that they had to pay? I mean, they sometimes do, and we have fights with them with IRS, and all of us have our bureaucratic nightmares. But still, as a program, the federal government's going to go bankrupt? No, you can't go bankrupt. They'll just print more money.
Now, if you compare that to the way that it works right now without Medicaid expansion, there's something called a low-income pool or a LIP pool. Right. If you could explain how that works.
Yeah, well, right now, that law that you mentioned that requires everyone to be seen.
EMTALA, right?
Right. And that's funded by federal money. There's a federal match and there's a state match. And it's like 3 to 1 or 2 to 1, 1/3 a local match, and then the federal government comes up with the rest for what you'd call charity care, people who can't pay. And it only applies in the emergency room. So that's where the emergency rooms get their money, from this low-income pool for the matching. Now, I'm simplifying it a little bit, but it is pretty complicated. Our Florida government did not want to come up with a match for that. So they concocted a scheme that works very well. That is, the hospitals and local governments, they raise the money locally, and they lend it to the state. And the state then shows it to the federal government and says, here's our match, having not put up anything out of state money. And then the federal government gives the match money back, and it all goes back to the different hospitals. It goes into this pool, and then it's distributed by a low-income pool council that decides which hospitals, do more charity care, and they distribute it that way. The trouble is, Obamacare is going to pay for much of the charity care through insurance benefits, Medicaid benefits, so that those people don't have to go to a nurse to an emergency room. They would go to a nurse practitioner, doctor, some less expensive means, appropriately, of course. And now they go to the hospital only, and the hospitals won't have that match because the federal government told Rick Scott and the legislature, no, we're not going to keep matching on the low-income pool. We're not going to do it because you should be getting the money from that other pocket. We have this other pocket set up with Medicaid expansion where you can get the money from there, and we're going to let that other one dry up. And so Scott's budget and the budget that the House and Senate have developed are going to have a big $2 billion hole.
And you're going to have a situation now where when somebody comes into an emergency room, they're sick, they can't afford to pay for care, there's not going to be a lip pool because, like you mentioned, the federal government's not going to be funding that anymore. And the state of Florida has declined to expand Medicaid. So now the hospitals are going to be left with no means of reimbursement.
Right.
And as we were discussing before the show, there's a very real possibility that hospitals might be going under as a result of this because they cannot decline patients for inability to pay under EMTALA laws.
Right. It's exactly right. So it's a much, much bigger thing than just saying, well, we don't want this money because we don't want Obama to look good. I really can't figure out why they're not taking it. They could say they don't want to take federal money because ideologically, but they take federal money for everything, for roads and for, just think of it. You have federal subsidies all over. So they're doing it on this basis because it's something that they think they can perhaps say, I just as a guess, because and I think the number is $52 billion over 10 years that is going to come into the state with the expansion, Medicaid expansion, and that's jobs. I mean, that's people working in the healthcare industry, durable medical equipment, therapists, doctors, nurses, orderlies, all of that stuff is all going to be jobs. And the $22 billion, I think, is just the hospitals that would be coming through. So everybody is going to not benefit if it's not there. And I think that they just want to be sure that somebody gets a cut of that money. They don't want to vote for it without, having some campaign money put in.
We're going to have to take a short break, and we'll be back with Elaine. Stay tuned.
This program is brought to you by Fresh Start Tax. Fresh Start Tax offers a full range of tax and accounting services, including tax return preparation and bookkeeping, as well as back taxes, wage garnishments, unfiled returns, or any other tax-related concern. Our dedicated team of tax attorneys, CPAs, and former IRS agents offer over 60 years of professional tax experience. For a free consultation, call 866-700-1040. That's 866-700-1040. You can also visit us on the web at freshstarttax.com. This program is brought to you by the law firm of Altman, Flynn, and Kubler. Our law firm specializes in elder law and intellectual property, including patents, trademarks, and copyrights. If you would like to patent your idea, please contact our Fort Lauderdale office for a free consultation. We offer elder law services, including estate planning, long-term care planning, and preparation of healthcare documents. We strive to plan for your future needs while allowing you to retain as much dignity and independence as possible. To find out more or to make an appointment, call 954-563-4814. That's 954-563-4814. Or visit us online at altmanpatent.com. That's OLTMANDATENT.com. Spokesperson, not an attorney. You're listening to Talk Legal with Jeff Van Treese, who brings you all the latest news in the legal world. If you would like to ask a question or share a story on the air, please call toll-free 888-565-1470. Once again, that's 888-565-1470. Now, back to Talk Legal with Jeff Van Treese.
And we're back. My guest this evening is former Congresswoman Elaine Schwartz. She served in the Florida House of Representatives from 2006 until 2014 when her term expired. And this is her first legislative session out of office. So we've been discussing some issues that have been going on in Tallahassee and in Washington. We were talking about Medicaid expansion before the break. I'd like to turn our attention to Medicaid managed care, which is essentially a transition of Medicaid services in Florida, which is currently managed by AHCA, or the Agency for Healthcare Administration. And those services are now being transitioned over to private health insurance companies, a combination of HMOs and provider service networks. And this is going to have a dramatic effect on the way that Medicaid services are administered. So I'd like to ask Elaine, what are your thoughts on Medicaid managed care?
Well, funny you should ask. I actually, having worked in the Medicaid arena as an elder law attorney and helping families get public benefits for, I guess it was maybe 11 or 12 years before I decided to run for office. And I ran for office for other reasons, but I wound up on these healthcare committees because the Medicaid laws are just so convoluted. It's very, very difficult to kind of keep them all straight. Every program has different qualifications and different benefits, even though they seem very similar. So I wound up on those committees and discovered in my first year that Jeb Bush had a plan, and it was to privatize those precious Medicaid dollars. And they just wanted, I can only say that they wanted Medicaid dollars to be filtered through private companies so that private companies would be getting a part of our taxpayer dollars. The protections and controls on how that money is overseen is really it's not minimal, but it's not overseen well. Not. So, did you want to ask me something?
Oh, and there's not a whole lot of providers that have government contracts. We're talking about 10 providers or something like that.
Right, that's part of it. In fact, I spoke with a provider of durable medical equipment here in Broward. She's had 32 years her company has been providing wheelchairs and all that kind of equipment. And now they didn't get the statewide bid, and so she'll be out of business because that's what she did. She provided those things to Medicaid people in nursing homes and the long-term care. So when I say it's funny you should ask, because that's what I spent a hefty part of my career fighting. I was unsuccessful in stopping it. It started out as a pilot program with in Broward, Duval, and then 3 little counties around Duval County. So we in Broward County saw how services were being denied, and it was very, very difficult for these low-income, it wasn't the disabled population, but it was people blind. It was, people who really couldn't maneuver the system well, and they were just bamboozled. And they would come to me as a rep to find out, what can I do to get my Medicaid?
Now, will this affect all people that are receiving Medicaid, both those out in the public that are receiving it out in the population, as well as those that are institutionalized in a nursing home?
Exactly.
This
right.
is going to, everyone's going to be receiving their services through a managed care company.
Okay, the only Medicaid people who are not going to be receiving it through the managed care at this point are the disabled, and that's the specific diseases, cerebral palsy, all kinds of problems that are not, they're part of the persons with disabilities. It's a different department. And those are just certain, and they're not going to be in the managed care yet. They'll be there soon. Don't worry. They'll put them in.
And your concern here is also that it's going to be less transparent and more secretive.
Absolutely.
So for example, if you have a dispute, let's say with a government agency, let's say the Agency for Healthcare Administration, you can appeal that.
Right.
You also have the Freedom of Information Act where you can get information about their internal processes and so forth. That's not going to apply to one of these managed care organizations.
Right. And the perfect example was, it was many years, quite a few years ago, a company, and I will use their name. They asked me not to use their name because they are different people now, but I'm just so angry at them. It was called WellCare then. They've even changed their name. And they were taking 38% of those precious Medicaid dollars and using them as administrative costs. And they were stopped. And all of their high executives were just finally this past year, after years and years of litigation and stalling, were finally found guilty and going to jail with fines that were just minimal compared to what they stole. And they reorganized themselves, and supposedly they got one of the biggest contracts in the state for managed care. And it's really the staff at ACA to oversee these people is smaller and smaller and smaller. So you don't have the backup of government oversight, exactly what you said.
And of course, you're also concerned that the managed care organizations are going to find ways to cut benefits.
Yes, and deny them, absolutely. And of course, that's part of it, if they're going to save money by not giving benefits. So that's part of the system. It was made statewide in 2011. And of course, I must tell you, I was pretty depressed as I felt my career had not blossomed in the direction I wanted to. I had some wonderful bills that I did that were not related to these things, and I really have very, very good. But on this score, I really felt that the folks who wanted managed care, and it's also the Obama administration. They also think managed care is a solution too. And that was my biggest disappointment, that the summer that CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, approved our statewide on the promises of our government that they would oversee it. So luckily, I think the federal government is going to come in and is going to watch over them, and has been being critical of a critical eye on those providers, those insurance companies. Okay.
In the few minutes we have left, I'd like to talk about some of the legislative activity going on right now in Tallahassee. One of the bills that's currently before, I believe it's the House of Representatives, is the Campus Carry, which passed through its subcommittee recently. With that bill, it's now going to be legal or rather, college campuses will have to allow students and other people associated with the college to carry firearms.
Right.
They have the option of carrying firearms if they choose to. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, we do have laws that allow us to carry guns. I said to you before, I'm an old tomboy. I used to like to have play cowboys and Indians and stuff as a little kid, but they're too dangerous. I mean, people's lives are in the balance when someone has a gun and is not able to make rational decisions.
Do you think that the danger is specifically targeted at schools? Do you think that college campuses are a more dangerous place for people to be carrying firearms than, let's just say, on the street or in a convenience store at the mall or anywhere else?
Oh, I never thought of that. I don't think it's more dangerous. It's just the same. I don't think one should be exempt from protections of the public just because you're on a college campus. I don't think it's such a good idea. So I'm definitely not in favor. And the real problem is it's the gun industry that's doing it, that the manufacturers that want to sell more guns. So you want to make sure that people have more guns, and they're fueling the entire Second Amendment movement, which of course Second Amendment is there, but we don't have to go around shooting each other.
We're going to have to leave it at that. We have just a couple of minutes left. I want to make sure that you get a chance to give all of your contact information out to our listeners in the event they're in need of your services.
Oh, how very nice of you. Yes. Well, I'm in Hollywood and South Broward County, and I've been practicing elder law for almost 20 years now. I've been an attorney for more than double that, having been with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and with some very interesting career moves. I was a city attorney in Hollywood before that. So my phone number, let me give you an email address. That's really probably the easiest, and that's Elaine Schwartz at Gmail. And you can reach me there, and I would be very, very happy to be able to either discuss any of these issues or if you have problems with public benefits. That's wills, trusts, probates, the usual elder law issues, but then, of course, that terrible, frightening time when you need benefit, we need extra expenses to handle the declining of your facilities, of your family. Faculties.
Well, I'd like to give a very special thanks to my guest, Elaine Schwartz. I'd like to thank all of our listeners. Please tune in next week, where my guest will be employment attorney Neil Kodsey, and that will be next week, Tuesday night. This is Jeff Van Treese for Talk Legal. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you for listening to Talk Legal with Jeff Van Treese. Tune in next week for more insightful and exciting information about the law. You can contact Jeff by email at jvt2law@gmail.com or give him a call at 561-789-6866. That's 561-789-6866. The content of the preceding program, including all statements from the host and guests, is to provide general information and commentary about the law. Under no circumstances does any statement made by a host or guest to a caller or listener constitute legal advice or the formation of an attorney-client relationship, and the material of this program should not be viewed as a substitute for personal consultation with an attorney. The opinions expressed on